and welcome back to another video. Today's Lightbox is going to be another boss from the game Hollowknight, and it's going to be the Mantis Lords. Woohoo! So this boss fight is one of my favorites in the game, and it's no surprise that I wanted to make it into a Lightbox. I got started how I always do, just by taking my reference photo and flipping it so I can copy it correctly. Then I plan out what parts of the image will be on what layer, which is pretty easy to decide, and after drawing the border around all the papers, I can get started on the first layer. On this layer, I decided to put the knight and those spike pits that come up on either side. And the ground for this is made up of little crooked planks, and I just try to emulate them by cutting lopsided shapes. And as for the knight, I just tried my best to make it look how it does in the picture by just copying it to the best of my abilities, and it turned out pretty well. Then I just cut it out, and that was pretty easy, and the same for the spike pits. Once it was all cut out, I moved on to the next layer, which will be the metal bars that come down on either side when the fight starts. I started out by just sketching out all the bars, and this was the most difficult layer for sure, just because there were a lot of thin straight lines and hand cutting them all was quite tricky. I ended up leaving out half the bars because it just would have been too difficult to cut all of it. And even by making it easier, I ended up making some mistakes and cutting things by accident, so it was a little frustrating, but I just fixed those things with some tape and it was all good. Up next is that platform that the 4 thrones stand on, and I just used the same technique as earlier with the floor to get the look, and overall it looks good, but the only thing I messed up was that I made it too tall, which caused the whole thing to be a little squished near the top in the end, but it wasn't that big of a deal that it made me restart or anything, so yeah. For this next part, I wasn't quite sure how I was going to do it with the Mantis Lords and the thrones and everything, if I wanted to be on one layer or not, and how I was going to make everything stand up on its own and to just work, so that was a little bit tricky to figure out. Ultimately, I decided to do the throne on one layer and then the Mantis Lords on the one before them. There are also these stakes with the skulls of several enemies stabbed onto them, and they're barely visible, but I wanted to make sure to include them. So I just make sure to draw and cut them out quickly, and I'm not quite sure what kind of bug skulls they are or anything, but they were pretty easy to cut out and they were kind of cute, so. And once that was done, I moved onto the layer with the actual mantises, so I just started off by drawing thin rectangles for them to stand on. I made sure everything was level and even, and then I got started on drawing the actual bugs. And after drawing out a sketch to get the rough shape and idea of the bugs, I started adding details. The first one I drew was the one on the right, and then I just worked my way to the left, and I tried to copy the image to the best of my abilities, and this is how they turned out. They're pretty cute, and I was a little worried that I wouldn't be able to cut them out nicely because of all the little details, but I managed. The only thing I kind of regret is that I drew them a little too big, but at this point in the process I didn't realize it, so I just, stuck with it. And now that I get a good look at it all together, I realized that I wanted those spikes with the skulls on them to be one layer forward and higher up. So I just quickly chopped them out of their layer and then glued them on the previous layer but higher up, and that looked a lot better, so I was happy. And now moving on to the background, as you can see, there are these like arches and structures that I assume are remnants of buildings or walls, since this like fight is located in the Mantis village. I made 2 layers of these structures, the first of which is a low wall with more of those spikes and skulls, and there were only 2 spikes, so it was pretty easy, and yeah, I just cut them out and I finished up that layer. And the next layer behind it is just more of these structures, except they go all the way up to the ceiling, and these were even more simple since there were no spikes and it was just super easy to cut out, so that was another quick layer. And for the way far background, there are a bunch of these round, like I want to say spores or some kind of fungi or mushrooms. Honestly, I don't even know. But it's the fungal waste, so I'm thinking it's something like that. But yeah. I wanted some more dimension and interest, so I did 2 layers of these spore things. And these layers were really fun to draw, because they were nice bubbly shapes and it was just fun. But cutting them out was not. It's just not fun to cut very small round shapes by hand with a knife, and mistakes are very likely, and I made some. But I pushed through and I finally finished it all. And after that ordeal, it was just 1 more layer in the front to frame the whole lightbox, and nothing crazy on this layer, just some spores and some more floor planks. And once that was done, there was 1 more thing that had to be done before it was ready to assemble, and that was that the platform needs parchment paper so it's not see-through and you can't see all of the stuff behind it. So I just did that quickly and it was really simple. And now it was time to assemble, but if you just look at this how it is, it's pretty overwhelming. The background and the foreground all have very many details and it just looks way too crowded. And also if you look at the picture, then the background spores and stuff are barely visible. So guess what I did to fix that? I just added some parchment paper to diffuse the light, and I just made those layers like very not visible. And now it's done, and I'm really happy with it. I think this is one of my favorite light boxes that I've made so far, and I really like this teal light. It's just so pretty. But there was this annoying fly that just wouldn't leave my light box alone and kept buzzing around. So if you see a fly, he's just chilling. But yeah. So yeah, that was it, and I hope you enjoyed. Leave a comment of what you'd like me to do next, or if you have recommendations. And I also do custom lightbox orders, so I'll have my email in the description, and subscribe if you enjoy. Bye!